And we're live. There we go.
Very good. Okay, so we're live on YouTube, as I understand. My name's Luke, Luke Zadkovich. I'm a partner at the law firm Floyd Zadkovich. I have one of our associates on with me, Jonas Patswell, and this is the first time we are going live on YouTube. We are delighted today to be speaking with some Tulane students about various topics. And we're just, if you bear with us, we're just getting people logged into the system, and we'll start shortly.
I'm admitting folks now, so see, we have some CDO people join in.
Be speaking with some.
Hi. I think you should all be able to unmute yourselves if you want to say a few things. Maybe introduce yourself. We'll be starting in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Leslie Griffin. I'm the Assistant Dean for Career Development and Diversity Initiatives at Tulane Law. So thank you for having this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, welcome. And just to mention, as more people are coming in, we'll do a little intro in a bit. But we are live streaming this, and it's on active speaker mode. So I trust you're happy for your questions to go onto the live feed. I just thought we should make that clear at the outset.
Yes, and in case anyone is watching this and does not want to appear live on this video stream, you can always ask questions through the YouTube chat. So we are monitoring that as well, and I will pass the questions on to Luke or myself to be answered. All right, I'll just keep admitting people. Okay, I think what we should do at this point is just get it started, and if people join on later, that's fine. Welcome to the first Floyd Zadkovich at Tulane Law School Q&A session. My name is Jonas Patswell. I am a graduate of this year, so super excited to be here with Floyd Zadkovich. What we're gonna do is really like an open conversation style Q&A. Everyone can chime in, everyone can ask a question. The way we do this is whoever wants to ask, this is on speaker view, so you will be streamed live on YouTube. As soon as you talk on here, just unmute yourself and you'll be able to ask any question that you may have. Anyone who doesn't feel comfortable with that can ask the questions on the chat function on YouTube. All right, so I think the best way to handle this is for you to raise your hand or do like the little wave icon if you want to ask a question, or if no one is talking, just unmute and get started. I will kick it over to Luke Zadkovich. He's gonna give us his introduction.
Great. Well, look, delighted that you're all with us. We're really pleased to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. We were, as a firm, a little while ago when the pandemic really set in, trying to think through who would be affected by this, and obviously it just reaches so many parts of society, and there's the obvious devastating health consequences, and then the fallout economically, and that touches probably pretty much most of the global society at the moment. But one area or group of people that we thought would be particularly concerned about the pandemic are those looking for positions coming out of university, halfway through their studies, wondering, what does this mean for my job prospects? What opportunities might there be does this mean all this hard work and effort that I've been putting in is for nothing? What's the situation in the industry that I'm focused on? What does it mean for the law firms that are working in this area, for the clients that they serve? And we thought at this time in particular, this might be a good way of setting up a kind of Q&A session where students can kind of ask whatever questions they have of us, some tips, guidance on how to put themselves in the best position they can for job positions, some guidance, what it all may mean, that kind of thing, and really just open up the forum, provide that access, and see how it goes. So that was the idea behind this session. We really can do it however you want, and would welcome some questions. If you want to give a little bit of background about yourself and where you're at, that's completely fine. It's up to you, frankly, how you want to do this session.
All right. So without further ado, are there any questions?
So I did have a question about how, just in your opinion, how is the pandemic impacting your particular firm? Because we have been contacted by some firms with questions about how we're going to do recruiting for the next year, for the next cycle. But I haven't talked to anyone at the firms about what's actually going on right now at the firms when it comes to like your business and your clients, and just what are the kind of things you're thinking about when you are starting to, think and plan for recruiting for the next cycle?
I think that's an excellent question, Leslie, and there's a lot to unpack in that. If I speak for a moment about our firm and where we're at, we, in an operational sense, haven't really been that affected. Yes, we're all working from home. We're not in our offices. We've got offices in New York, Chicago, Houston, and also in London. And we're all now working out of those offices at home and juggling kids or personal issues and what have you. But frankly speaking, most of our work is done online, whether that's emailing or through video calls now, through telephone calls. So from an operational sense, it has been rather seamless. And our firm is set up in an agile way anyway. We've been like that from the outset. We've been going for 3 years now. I've got many years of experience prior to that, but our firm is just nearing its 3rd year birthday. So from an operational perspective, it's been largely business as usual, other than the little frustrations here or there. So compared to many out there, we are very fortunate and lucky to be able to continue our business in this difficult period. And of course, others, including our clients, are really, really struggling or just not being able to operate. Then there's the business side of the law, our firm, and how we're progressing. So far, we have seen a steady flow of work, and I don't think our work has spiked or tailed off really. It's been continuing to come in. We have had a number of different inquiries, some that are certainly new and to do with the pandemic and the effects, whether it's force majeure issues, other delay issues, contractual positions, pricing going up and down. We've got some floating storage issues now where charter parties were fixed at lower at charter rates, and the owners want to try and get out of those contracts and increase the rate. So there have been a number of new instructions come in that are related to the pandemic. But in terms of business and looking at overall productivity, it has been relatively stable for us. What that means in the future, I'm not sure. I can't really say. with certainty what that's going to look like in the future. But from our firm's perspective, we are feeling very fortunate about our position and where we are. So our plans in terms of growth and bringing on others has not really changed. We haven't taken a different approach to that, and if anything, we want to make sure that in this period when it's very difficult for many out there, that we're trying to look at this as an opportunity to the extent we can, and make investments, whether that's in legal tech, the way that we're structured, the way that we're operating. We're looking to find opportunities, and there are many actually when you kind of dig below the surface. So, for example, these types of conversations, we're having them with clients, developing business, not having to travel around the world because all of our clients are global. Not all of them, but many of our clients are based all over the world. So yeah, there is some opportunity in there. So from a business perspective, we are still moving forward. And if anything, our business model, I think, has proven to be a good one for very difficult times like this.
Yeah, and if I can just add on that, from a law student's perspective, I think, and just what I've seen in the past couple of months from friends, and not all 3 Ls, some of them 2 Ls or even 1 Ls, I think staying in contact with the places that you want to work for or intern with is key. I think M&A practices, from what I've seen, are not always taking on summer associates for this summer. So there may be some change there that doesn't hit litigators that hard. But I think staying in touch with people is key, just to see where they're at. And I think people are usually very willing to share so that everyone can make their best to plan around it. Anyone else? You can also, if you want to type your question, you can also type it in the Zoom chat room. I think that would work too, just to make it a little bit easier for the guys that are on Zoom right now. All right, Taylor, yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, yes. My name is Taylor Bakke. I'm a recent graduate of Tulane. And I first want to thank you both for having us and for putting this together. My question is more general, not really specific to COVID, about any tips you could have for client development, and particularly in the maritime and admiralty field. Some things that you definitely attend or that you would suggest doing in terms of just building a base right now and in the future.
Yeah, good question, Taylor. So just so I understand it, that's from as a law firm, how are we looking to build our clients? How do we go about client development? Not necessarily at this time, but more generally. Yeah. Okay. So look, it's an absolute critical part of any business, how they build their client base. That goes without saying. It's not one of the main focuses, obviously, of law school. It's not what you get taught all that much as you're going through your studies, and yet it becomes such a core part of building a successful practice. Some of it comes naturally. Some of it you have to really work at and learn from mentors and others that go before you, undertake some courses, networking, and all of that. But in terms of practical advice, I think it's different at different levels. So if you're coming in as a grad, first year out, second year out, the marketing that you might be doing to build your clients would in some ways be different to the marketing that might be done by the senior partners of the firm, albeit that it's with the same objective. I think coming into the industry for someone like yourself, the networking side of it is really critical. And you know what? It's already started. Whoever you met at law school and the contacts and networks that you've already started to build, that's your first set of potential clients one day. And from that, you will find when you go to, whether it's the MLA events or GNOBFA or any of these industry functions, and there are many. There are those that are focused on maritime law, and there are those that are industry-based. And there's a series of them. We can give you the details of all of those, no worries. Getting along to them, you're going to start to see the same people. You're going to meet new people, and it's a really useful way of networking. Get your name out there, and so people get to know you. And as you're starting your career, one of the tips that I could give you that I learned the hard way, I think, is to develop client relationships or networks without necessarily thinking about whether they're going to send me work or being worried about, is this person going to send me work? That will just come. Like in 5 years' time, you will find that the people that you have met along the way, you've impressed, you've been an associate on a case, and that client liked what you've done. Or you're dealing with the more junior claims handler at an insurer or whatever the situation is. That person, when they start to get into a decision-making position, remembers you. And if you've had that longevity to the relationship and it's built on trust and all of that, it becomes much easier to bring in that work. And so for someone coming into the industry, I would say patience is really a virtue here. Developing a network, not being too pushy in developing those relationships, and seeing where it goes. Obviously, the further up the food chain, so to speak, that you go, the more complexity that client development strategy becomes. There's the whole online marketing. The online marketing side of things that I could talk about that for an hour. I won't. But really, where most of my work, the firm's work, my partners and the associates' work comes from, will be through that personal relationship that often has been built up over many years, or will come through referral and word of mouth. And that's where your service is doing the talking for you. So those are some of the ideas.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I can just add on that from a law student's perspective, for me, that meant I just want to be wherever I can, industry related. So I knew that I wanted to do maritime law. Let me just admit the next person here. I knew that I wanted to do maritime law. So I looked at all maritime law conferences, especially those in New Orleans that I could easily get to. So for every student out there that is listening to this, definitely attend Admiralty Disruption next year. And ALI just happened this year, so will happen in 2 years' time in 2022. And those conferences are awesome. You get to meet a lot of practitioners. And yeah, I think that is a good first step. If you are otherwise inclined, maybe have a maritime background, some folks join the local propeller club. I don't know if that's a thing in the UK, Luke, but here it seems like a port city usually has its own propeller club of, like folks with maritime industry background. If you have that, that's probably a great place to start. It could be anything where people come together. So I try to keep an open mind. That's my perspective on it. All right, any other questions?
question.
Yes.
For students who are just generally not inclined to network, maybe because of their personal disposition or for whatever, maybe they're very shy and it's not natural to them to do that. How do you recommend that those students kind of break through that barrier? And what are the most effective ways of networking as far as meeting people in the industry and trying to put themselves out there?
Yeah, very good question. I think the type of person you've just described there is probably the majority of people. I think most people find networking, particularly when you start it, quite a daunting prospect, putting yourself out there and trying to develop networks and all that goes with that. It comes with time. I'll say that it does get easier over time, but fundamentally there are extroverts or introverts. There are all sorts of different people out there, and we find different things more comfortable. What I will say is with online marketing, I think there's a huge opportunity for introverts and for people who don't find the networking as the face-to-face or the group networking as comfortable. And there's different ways of creating a brand, personal brand, and a name for yourself through online marketing. That could be writing articles and pushing articles out. It could be having an active Twitter feed. It could be on LinkedIn and commenting and liking certain articles by clients, following clients. And that you don't have to get in front of a camera and do a live feed. It's not for everyone. There's podcasting. I think podcasting is a really effective way of getting out content in an interesting, engaging way without seeing your face on a screen, so to speak. And I've got a lot of friends who have gotten right into podcasting now. So all of these online tools are useful, and I think can have really good positive benefits. The other types of marketing are some people don't like the group situation, but they're very good one-on-one. And I know personally, I don't mind the group situation. I've gotten more comfortable with it over the years. But probably the strongest relationships that I've made, as a lawyer client, have been when I've had that opportunity to have a lunch. I know that's difficult at the moment. It's probably going to be a Zoom call, but have had the opportunity one-on-one to really get to know them. And so, though, as I say, those different strategies all make a difference, and it's a combination of these things that can certainly help develop those relationships without the active networking in the traditional sense of that word. And as I mentioned before, I think the last point I'd make on this is service. And once you get into the industry and you start working in whatever role that is, so whether it's an NGO, whether it's a law firm, whatever path you take, whoever your stakeholders are and those that you are serving, if you are delivering excellent service for them, they know that they can trust you. They know that you are that lawyer who will go out of your way for them. They really feel that because it's true. Then that's your best form of marketing, and they will tell someone else. Just like if you watch a podcast that you really like and you share it with your friends, and if you don't really like it and someone can say at the end of it, please share this, and you won't. Word of mouth is a really big marketing tool for lawyers.
Yeah, and on that note, again, from a law student's perspective, I think what helps is putting yourself out there, even though you may feel like you're not smart enough or you don't know enough right now. You're just a law student, maybe a 1L, you just started. But it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't really matter, I think. And I had to learn that. I grew up in Germany and went to German law school first, where networking is really not that much of a thing. So when I came over here, I had to relearn this entire deal of, yeah, you go to an event and you talk to lawyers that have been practicing for sometimes, 20, 30, 40 years. And I was feeling insecure because I thought I didn't know enough. And I think the answer really is just do it. It's tough. It may feel uncomfortable, but really no one is out to get you, and think, oh, that's just a 1L, whatever. People don't think like that. And I didn't know it. And I was kind of forced to do a couple of things that then turned out to be very good, forced myself to do it, and turned out to be very, very good. So I can only recommend putting yourself out there without much regard to, how secure you feel.
It's a really good point, Jonas, because at university, it feels like there's this really big barrier between studying and the big wide world out there of work and law firms and whatever it is, and it can feel like how am I going to get that position? What am I going to do? And there's that uncertainty built into it. But I would strongly encourage all of you to start to make connections with firms and with the industry in which you're interested, whatever that may be, as early as you can. And you will be surprised at if you send a thoughtful message, email through to someone at a firm because you're interested in what they're doing or their firm's doing, or you've seen some initiatives. I don't know, it could be any type of initiative that they're interested in. You look, you think carefully, oh, that's the lead partner on that initiative. I'm quite interested in that. And you send them a thoughtful message. I would hesitate to say 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a positive reaction in some shape or form. And it just starts that process. And the earlier you start that process of talking to people in the industry and getting to know more about this or that, it just becomes more comfortable.
And if you don't get a response, it's not personal, right? They probably just don't have the time. So I think that's another thing to know, that these things are not personal. One more little thing that I want to share. I started doing a couple of LinkedIn videos. I did one for Admiralty Disruption a year and a half ago, and it was for Floyd Zadkovich. And I guess I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for working for Floyd Zadkovich at the time. But what it did was, people knew me or had seen me before I talked to them. And that was a great icebreaker. So if anyone is out there and is a little bit insecure, but wants to make that leap, just record a couple of videos. If you feel like you can do that, put it out there, and people will recognize you, and it will be an icebreaker. It will be so much easier to talk to folks. And I think that helps everyone. That's a good way to do it. All righty. Do we have more questions? I may not be able to see the hand that goes up. Oh yeah, cool. Rachel.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for talking with us. I'm wondering, as a student at Tulane, how to go from being local and getting into specifically the international aspect of your firm, getting to a firm that does something internationally. Like you said, there's a little bit of self-confidence issue about feeling like you deserve to be there, and going from a student, I guess expectations can be that you have to work your way to something that big. And then, there's the other view that you can fake it till you make it. So can you talk about that and talk about practical things that you can do to market yourself as a student towards something bigger like international commercial law?
Thank you, Rachel. I think that's a really, really interesting question and a good one. If I can go back a little bit, I might tell you a bit more about myself, some of my background. You've probably all picked up I've got a bit of an Aussie accent. So I grew up in Australia, south of Sydney, about an hour and a half south of Sydney. It's a city, but kind of stretched out city, which was very much like a bunch of villages on the beach. And I went to the local primary school, local high school, local university. And I made a decision early on in my university studies. In Australia, you do 5 years, a double degree. I did politics with law. And I decided to work. I needed to work to pay the bills as well. So I started paralegaling quite early on. And so that's going back almost 20 years now. And at that stage, I had this, I had a desire deep down to do international work, pretty much framed just how you had framed it. I would have tried to ask a very similar question if I was in your position. And I would have had no idea how to get into it. I didn't even know about maritime law when I started doing law. I didn't even know about maritime law when I finished my law degree. I worked in firms doing personal injury work. This is as a paralegal, as I'm still studying. I then moved into insurance law and ended up landing a job in the Sydney market with a national firm that did insurance law. And so I did that for 3 years and moved from there over to London and worked at one of the largest, if not the largest, shipping law firm in London. I stayed there for 7 years, and then I moved over to a P&I club in New Jersey, the UK P&I club, one of the major international group clubs. And from there, I then set up my own firm. But I think the point of giving you the background is to say, I didn't have a clear path to get to where I am today. Looking back, it looks clear, but it took a number of twists and turns. And if you had asked me in the first year of university that one day I'd be running my own international law firm with multiple offices in different jurisdictions doing really interesting international work, I would have laughed at you. I would have said, oh yeah, right, whatever. And it would have come from a place of insecurity. But actually getting into it and just taking it a step at a time, it is definitely achievable. It really, really is. And you've already, are you studying maritime law at Tulane, or?
I haven't taken a maritime law class yet.
So are you taking other international subjects?
Yes, I've taken transnational litigation classes on EU business law. Next semester, I'll take classes on international business transactions, international trade finance and banking.
Great, excellent. Well, look, you're on the right path. So, what you can do at this stage is through your selection of electives, you can demonstrate a keen interest in international law. That's step number one, and beyond that, what I would start to do is I would start to identify law firms, not necessarily big law, but you can also put those in as well. But I would go through and look at very closely what are the firms that are working in the area of law that I'm interested in. Look at Chambers and Partners and Legal 500, those and other ranking websites. They will give you a good summary as to who are the leaders in those fields. Don't just think, oh, I have to get into a band one firm. It doesn't work like that. Any firm that's ranked is going to be worthwhile looking at, and start to look at those firms and what they're doing in the space. Absorb the content that they're producing, follow them on LinkedIn, look at the articles that they produce, really get to know and think carefully about what does an international litigator or an international transactional lawyer do? What are the clients that they serve? What are the types of law that they put together? And then I would find ways to start to interact with them. And as I say, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the formal interview round. And of course, you want to do that as well. But find ways to have contact with them in different ways. It could be liking certain articles. It could be sending a message to someone, and maybe an associate could be a good someone like the senior associate level, you might find someone's really interested. Get connected with a firm, follow them on LinkedIn for a while, see, oh yeah, I really like what they do. They were involved in that case and this case, and just write a message to someone, and you'll be surprised. If you show some thought and say, look, I'm studying this, I'm studying that. I know you don't know me, but I saw that you were the associate involved in this case or this transaction. I'm really just looking for some guidance and some wherewithal as to how to develop my career. I'm studying this, I'm studying that. I'm really interested in it. Would you have 5 or 10 minutes one day for a bit of a chat as to, give me some guidance? Do that a few times and you'll start to get some traction. And then of course there's conferences and seminars and looking at those types of things as well. And just getting that, as I say, just try to understand the full spectrum of what you're looking to do. If it's what we do maritime, commodities, commercial, big ticket litigation and international arbitration. It's a real growing area of our firm, as well as transactional work as well, primarily servicing those sectors. But if that's what you're interested in, then reach out. Find ways to connect with us. You'll find that our team is very approachable, I'd like to think, and just wants to encourage people into it. And I think that's not just restricted to our firm. I know many colleagues in different aspects of international law that are that way. And one final point, just to note on this, is that in the international sphere, you will find actually that it's almost easier to make connections and to develop contacts. It sounds counterintuitive, okay? But it's easier because most people who are practicing in international law have a worldly mindset. And what I mean by that is that they are generally speaking, outward looking and like to develop contacts, like to develop networks. You could even reach out to someone in another country, and I think I've got children noise in the background. But yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I'd suggest.
Thank you so much.
Please go. I was just going to add that meeting people, I think, at our stage as law students is key. And it's kind of a plug, but still consider taking Ray Wade's COGSA class. He offers it every spring, I think. He has great tips on networking, and much of what Luke said, get in touch with people that work in those law firms. I think that is key. Start at the associate, senior associate level. Partners are very busy. That's just the way it is. So I think that's a good place to start. Yeah.
One last thought on that. I'm sorry to go back on it. Is just try and line up experiences if you can. So even outside of the formal summer vacation schemes, start to get a bit of momentum behind your CV. Damn it, what law firms are looking for in any area of law, they're looking for commitment to what they are practicing. So if you've got an interest in international law, find ways to demonstrate that. Try and line up some experience. Going back to Leslie's point about not speaking, not sure about what other law firms are doing at the moment in this time, I think you might find that there are other opportunities that could be that might not necessarily be there. You might find someone is just more inclined to help a student out and say, look, I'm not sure what's happening with your summer vacation scheme this year. I'm not pressing for that, but I'd be really interested to know whether there's any way that I could get to know more about what your firm does in some way. And that might lead to something. And so as you start to get more vacation or work placement experiences on your CV, that adds to the credibility that you're interested in that area of law.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question, actually. You mentioned going from Australia to London to the US. Can you talk about the jurisdictional what kept you from practicing in different fields, or what you had to do to overcome that?
Yeah, so I when I moved from Sydney, I had worked for 3 years in a fast-paced insurance law group at one of the national firms there, and we handled some really interesting top-tier litigation. We handled the big HIH insurance collapse, which was the largest insurer in Australia at the time. And we were involved for one of the reinsurance brokers in that dispute. We handled, this was all on instructions for primary layer insurers. So there was also the insured's lawyers as well. We also were involved in the Multiplex, which is a major construction company in Australia, their Wembley project issues, and there was a material non-disclosure case brought against them, allegations of brought against them, and we handled that as well. So we did some really interesting insurance-related work, also on the coverage indemnity side. I decided that I wanted to go to London. At that stage, quite honestly, it was on a 2-year see the world type approach, and promised my mother that I'd be back in Australia before not too long. What is it now? That was, geez, that's about 16 years ago. So it kind of got extended along the way. But I made the jump from insurance law into trade and energy, so doing commodities and shipping work at that point in time. So I had the jurisdictional change from the Australian law and procedure to English law and procedure. I had to sit an exam. At that time, it was actually quite easy. It was just the ethics and accounting exam. So practically, it was quite straightforward. Australia, like the US, is a derivative, although I don't mean that in any derogatory sense, derogatory system of the English system, the common law system. So there wasn't a huge learning in the type of law across. But what was very different for me was the substantive law that I was dealing with. So I hadn't done any arbitration work. I hadn't done any shipping work. I hadn't done any commodities work, and that's what I was doing. So it was a steep learning curve for me. But at that point in time, I did have quite a bit of experience because I worked for 4 or 5 years through my degree as a paralegal as well. So by that time, I'd been working in and around law firms for almost 7 years. So I was, in a way, I was very junior at that firm in terms of my substantive maritime understanding, but I knew my way around a law firm by then pretty well. And that helped me. So I just had to then focus on, well, I've got to learn maritime law, and I read the books and found my way through. And the nature of practicing law is very much on a case-by-case basis. And yes, as you go on and the more experienced you are going to get to know concepts. You're going to learn strategies and tactics and procedure as a matter of course, and discrete points of law as well. You're going to just know them from time at the wheel. But for each individual case, you're always going to have to go and look at that discrete issue. On everything we deal with, it's a very rare, case where we just shoot from the hip. And the reason for that is that we might know the answer or be very close to knowing the answer straight away, right? Particularly in our wheelhouse. But even still, the particular fact pattern you're dealing with is going to be slightly different, and you're going to be arguing it from that client's perspective. So you might be wanting to fight against what you think the answer is and finding a way around it. So on every case, a good lawyer is going to be looking at that very, very carefully. And through that, you learn. So if you end up going and working for an international law firm, whether it's on a transaction or a litigation, I know litigation more at that top end, or arbitration for that matter, you're going to get to know that case inside and out. So as long as you've had good fundamentals, you've learned how to assess the law, you've learned how to research, you know your way around the concepts, you're familiar with how it works, it's not as difficult to piece it together when you get into the practice of it.
All right, we have a couple of questions in the chat here on Zoom. So let me just read the first one. And then as we go through, maybe we get to handle them all. It's 10:45 right now. It's like, seems like 3 or 4 of them. So I think we should be able to do that. Number one.
I'll just say on that, Jonas, before you read out, I do have another commitment in 15 minutes, but we have set up another Q&A session for next Thursday with Tulane as well. So if we don't happen to get through everything today, please do jump on next time. If you've had some more thoughts after today and you want to have a follow-up, by all means. This is intended to help you guys in however we can.
All right. So this first question is, I was wondering how you guys would recommend students to look for employment during COVID-19 period. What changes in the hiring schedule or management of the firm, I guess, of the firm or any firm may have been occurred caused by COVID?
Yeah. Look, I can't say that for a lot of firms this won't have affected their hiring and their decision making. I suspect there are a number of firms, depending on the areas that they're in, that will have real difficulty. They'll be looking at offloading lawyers and reducing their cost base. Unfortunately, that is most certainly a reality, not just for some law firms, for many businesses out there. So it will depend to some extent on the type of law and the individual law firms you're dealing with, how leveraged they may have been to debt, what situation they're in, and what's their cost position. So it's going to depend on a firm by firm basis. For those firms that actually, it could lead to more work for certain firms. If you're in the bankruptcy restructuring space, if you're in the employment space, in the international environment where we are, there's arguably going to be an uptick in work, or that will be the expectation, and that's the nature of these situations, that for lawyers, their services may be in more demand during difficult periods of time. So to answer the question, I think it depends a lot on the firm and the area that you're looking in. For us, we mentioned this earlier in this talk, we have not, as matters stand, changed our position. We are looking to grow. We're looking for good candidates, and as we look at our recruitment, the most important thing at the moment, and continues to be, is on finding top quality candidates, and those that are really excelling and will be a good fit for us. And so that's what we're looking for. That hasn't changed. Our hiring schedule remains as it is. We work on, because we're in quite an active growth phase, we work on an as needed basis. We're not set up in a formal, this is our recruitment round scenarios you might find with some of the bigger firms. And we look at what our need is, and welcome candidates. We both, Jonas and Eva Maria Meyer, who's also a Tulane alum, will be joining us next Thursday. We organized an interview round down at Tulane when we could travel and see people in real life, and they came out of that selection process. And so now we're looking to develop those relationships, have the contact through different ways. This is the start of getting to know some of the other candidates there at Tulane, and we welcome interest. So yeah, and coming back to the recommendation on what I would suggest you do, again, we touched on this a little earlier. I think what's important is, one, to take a long-term view of things. It it feels very abrupt. It is very abrupt. This is, the worst worst thing that's happened in most of our lifetimes, a global pandemic. Everyone is in the same boat. And yes, some plans may be set back 6 months. They may be set back 12 months. It may be more difficult to get a position. You may find that, you can land that job during this period of time. So one, I think, just take a step back, have a long-term view of things. Patience is going to be important. You may need to think, well, what can I do during this? If it's hard to get into the job market, what can I do during this time to set myself apart from others? What can I do to put myself in the best position? And that may be through offering to do some internships. It may be offering to do work placements. It could be some further study. It could be a specialist course. Writing a paper, but putting together some paper which you then self-publish, or you try and find a journal that will write it, will publish it for you. Get active on LinkedIn. There's nothing stopping anyone from doing a podcast or a YouTube or a blog. These are all things that you can do to demonstrate an interest in that area of law. And that's really the key, is when it comes round to convincing a prospective firm or employer that you're the right person for that role, what they're really looking for is someone who's intelligent, worked hard, they've got good marks, they're a good fit, and all of that, or the personable side of it. But also, I think not most importantly, but one of the key factors is a dedication to what that firm does. And you can, especially during a difficult time like this, you can do a lot of things to demonstrate that.
All righty. So the next question I will split up in two. The first part, very interesting question coming up. Are there any maritime areas or cities that have more opportunities available due to the COVID pandemic?
That's a good specific question. Okay. Any maritime areas or cities that have more opportunities available due to the COVID pandemic? Well, maritime law, I think, if I can be broad about it to begin with, will be affected in a similar way globally. There are going to be, and there are, more issues, more complications at the moment. And I think for lawyers, there's probably more work at this very moment in maritime law. That could be because there's a quarantine period that's been put in place in Italy, or it could be that a lot of containers go through Long Beach and they're having to just ship through essential goods, and lots of non-essential goods are being backed up. It could be all sorts of different things. And so I think, broadly speaking, maritime law is going to have as much work in many different parts of it. That said, maritime law is a very broad area, and in it you have collisions, you have contractual issues, you have personal injury work, you have asset tracing and securing and all of that. And if you break it down, I think the maritime law that deals with asset securing and asset chasing and arresting ships and security and all of that, that will be one area where you would expect there to be more than usual because of the COVID pandemic. And the traditional jurisdiction for dealing with a lot of that is New York because of the banks that are there, but it's certainly not limited to that. And we use Rule B attachment and Rule C attachment to arrest or attach assets all over the US. But I think in New York we would see more of that work, frankly speaking, than other parts of the country. And on the English side of things, which is the other main jurisdiction that deals with maritime law, you will be having, you'll expect to see more frequency in substantive issues. So cases, arbitrations dealing with disputes in maritime law. But that's slightly different to the attachment and security measures.
All right, very good. I think we have time for one more question. So here it is. If you are interested in practicing maritime, how important is broad-based general litigation experience beforehand? When I graduate, should I try to get a general litigation job to prepare for transitioning into a maritime job?
Okay. So I don't think having general litigation experience is a prerequisite for transitioning into a maritime job. If at the moment what you can get and what you want to do is a general litigation job and you go down that route, I think it is good experience to then transition into maritime law. Maritime law is in a way a subset of commercial litigation or arbitration, plus a number of other issues. So you have more jurisdictional aspects to maritime law and international flavor to it. So, and I mean this with respect, but I would suggest that it is almost commercial litigation plus. That said, I don't see any reason why you would need to do a general commercial role before getting into maritime law. And to the contrary, if you're interested in maritime law, I would suggest a better approach may be to take the maritime law subjects at Tulane, get involved in maritime journals and that side of the school, go along to seminars or webinars or whatever is on at the moment, and really try and demonstrate to a maritime law firm that you've got this interest in maritime law and you've shown it over a period of time. That's what we would look for. If we were looking for to fill a maritime role, we would be looking to candidates who have over a period of time shown an interest in maritime law. We would be less likely to look at someone who has gone and done commercial work for a while and not have any maritime experience, and then they've turned around and decided they want to do maritime law. It's not to say we wouldn't consider them, we would, but it's showing that real interest and commitment to that area of law that the firm does. That's important.
Yeah, let me just add on that, just from a law student's perspective and what I've seen. I've been working for Floyd Zadkovich for 2 years now as a law clerk after my first summer associateship. And from the class that I've taken, though I have taken maritime classes and prioritized those, what did help me were a couple of classes that tie in very well. For example, arbitration law is an obvious candidate that would go just as much to general litigation, but just works very well in conjunction with maritime law classes. So anything like that would certainly be helpful, in my opinion. I think that's it. We have 2 more minutes. Some last words, Luke?
I might just wrap up if that's okay. As I said before, if you do have more questions, please jump on to the Q&A that we're going to do next Thursday, I believe, Jonas.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Same time?
Same time. It is
Same time.
Thursday, the 28th of May, 10 a.m. Central Time.
A different associate. You would have me again, but Eva Maria Meyer again. She's a Tulane grad. Been working with us for a number of years now. She'll be joining as well, and Eva is originally from Germany, studied at Boston and then Tulane. So she's also got that international background to her path. So I know she'll have some interesting insights to share. So feel free to jump on again if you'd like to. And also get in touch with us. We're in all the usual places like LinkedIn, and I think we've even got an Instagram account going now, YouTube, our website. We are rolling out a virtual work placement. Again, we're trying to think of ways where we can help students during this uncertain period of time, and give them some experience with law firms and what they look like. And so we'll be developing that program, and you can get more details on that. Get in touch with Jonas, Eva, or myself. And so thank you all for your time. I hope you found this interesting. If any of your other colleagues there didn't get a chance to, please do let them know about the next session. And thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.